Hey, Artbox fans, this is Steve, your sometimes goofy host. As you can tell lately, I've just been in this poetry kick. So even at the beginning of the last couple episodes, I recite a poem. Today I walked into the Steam Center and there was Christy and she was working on a poem. And I said, hey, why don't you read this before this episode? And she said she would, but there's a follow-up poem. So this episode and next episode, Christy is going to grace us with, it's kind of a fun poem, and you'll enjoy it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christy. I work here at the Steam Center, and today I'm going to be sharing a poem with you called A Worm's Tale. This poem was written by David McMullen, and it was featured in Better Than Starbucks, Volume 4, Number 3. And it is about Wormington Wormbert McWormy III. All right, here we go. Wormington Wormbert McWormy III was tired of dodging each rain boot and bird. And worse than those obstacles, what really hurt was dragging his squishy, soft body through dirt. The dirt's packed with rocks that are pointy and jabby. He ended up each day feeling bashed up and scabby. So Wormington vowed to his friends, I won't settle for anything less than a suit made of metal. He went to his workshop and started to weld, and dreamed of the life that his future self held. A life without bandages, ointments, and creams, just armor that thwarted the harshest extremes. He pounded and forged at a lightning-fast pace, till each little bit of metal fit right into place. When finished, it made all the other worms squeal, a veritable fortress of rivets and steel, an excellent shield from each rock, bird, and boot. Nothing could pierce his impervious suit. Look, I'm invincible, Wormington cheered, but being the only one felt kinda weird. So Wormington said, I will build suits for all, 'cause no worm should ever feel helpless and small. So now the word's home to more clinking than squirming, a new worldwide problem they call global warming. All right, so if you like that, then stay tuned for the sequel of Wormington the Worm that will be shared on the next Artbox podcast. So stay tuned and let's see what Wormington is up to and what he continues to do.
Welcome to the Artbox podcast, where creativity lives, but more importantly, where stories are told. I'm your host, Steve, and here we believe every piece of art carries a story, and every artist has one worth sharing. From theater and song to archaeology and to our public lands, we explore the many ways creativity shows up in the world around us. Because I'm always happy to view a work of art, but I'm never fully satisfied until I've heard the story behind it. That's what we're all about, unpacking the journeys, the moments, the people, and the meaning that bring art to life. So whether you're an artist, a storyteller, or simply curious, pull up a chair. Let's open the box.
Oh, effortlessly beautiful. That's Venus and being you.
Craig Petersen, welcome to the Artbox.
Well, thank you, Steve.
And we met.
A book signing for the Rotary Club.
That's right, your book signing, and I got the book here.
Yes, you do. I see it.
Yes, and it's a good book, and it certainly made me think. But let's start out before that. Let's talk about 10-year-old Craig. What were you doing?
At that time in my life, getting used to a new stepfather, or my first stepfather, I should say. I never had another one. My mother and father divorced when I was about 8. My mother met a fellow at a church dance. His name was Don Tennell. They fell in love, and suddenly I had a new father. I found that a little difficult, but that's what I was wrestling with around 10 years old. And then we moved from Compton, California, down to another part of Southern California, in a place called Orange County, and a little community called Santa Ana Heights, which is now incorporated in the city of Newport Beach. That's where I finished elementary school, junior high school, and high school. I was shortly thereafter, I got married. My stepfather adopted myself and my brother Dennis and actually changed our names. My name was changed from Craig Petersen, S-O-N, which I was born given name, to Craig Tennell. And I carried the Craig Tennell name for most of my adult life until approximately 18 years ago. It was different being a kid. And at that time, my stepdad had become a school teacher at Smedley Junior High School. My mother was a typist, worked for Ford Aerospace in Newport Beach, typing, and then she started typing service at home. She was always a secretary, always a typist. And Don, my father, was a woodshop teacher, and we had woodshop equipment all over the house. And at about 10, 11 years old, my brother Dennis and I started to learn how to build things and fix things, which included not only things at the house, but over time, a number of rental houses to make extra income. My stepfather would do what they call today flipping houses.
Oh, really?
We had lots of them, not just one or two.
Yeah, there was no YouTube channel thing for flipping houses in those.
No YouTube's channel. What in the world would be a YouTube back then? No, but we did. We had countless. I've probably lost count. Probably between the neighborhood of 25 and 30 homes and duplexes and stuff that he would buy. We'd fix up and sell them, rent them out for a while, and we're also a landlord. A number of them in our neighborhood, some over in Santa Ana and Fountain Valley, Costa Mesa. And I learned all about fixing plumbing and electrical in those early years of my life.
Oh, well, it's a good thing to use your hands.
Yeah, frankly, it served me well all the way through last weekend when I had to fix something.
Well, it's probably served a lot of your friends as well, right? Because once people find out you know how to do that, then there's a never-ending stream.
You don't want to tell them. The thing nice about it is I can spot something that's wrong and recommend it or figure out how to fix it, or find somebody that I can see when somebody doesn't know how to fix it. I can tell you that. School is fun. I was really lucky as a kid when I think back on it, especially then. I went to a great elementary school, Bayview Elementary, and then went over to Kaiser Junior High, or 7th and 8th grade. It was a fun time, very active in my church. I was brought up in the Latter-day Saint Church, and at that time in my life, that was a big focus. Everything wrapped around what we did at school and at church, and of course, fixing the houses.
Was that an outlier, LDS Church in California? In your
Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Was that an outlier? Was it mostly a Utah and Nevada thing, or was there?
Well, Latter-day Church at that time probably had several million members around the world. It was based out of the Salt Lake City Church, the main.
Right.
Yeah. I brought up in the same church that the people in St. George are brought up in. It was just a ward that happened to be in Newport Beach. There were several of them. In fact, there's a Los Angeles Temple and all.
Oh, okay.
But Temple was there when I was a kid in the 60s. So I was an active Mormon. It felt different from Utah Mormons when I met some later in life, but nonetheless, I grew up in that church.
Well, did you have a teacher that was particularly impactful? Positively impactful for you?
A couple in high school in particular. One actually, Mrs. Brubaker was one in particular, had all 4 years in high school. I probably would never be able to write at all had I not had Mrs. Brubaker. And to that end, I did not like her. She made me do things I didn't like doing.
Oh.
One of them was to spell, another one was to punctuate, but the worst of all was to give a book report and have to stand in front of the room and give. And there's nothing worse than standing in front of a room of your friends and giving your very first book report and then running to the bathroom crying into the boys' room and just feeling like scared to death. I had to do that in Mrs. Brubaker's class. And the worst of all, I went to a 4-year high school. I had her every single year.
Did you really?
Every single year.
Well, you said worst of all.
Yeah.
But it was good.
I just
20/20 hindsight?
Oh, today, if I saw her, I'd give her the biggest hug in the world. I mean, I'm so grateful that she taught me how to put sentences together. We took classes called technical writing for a couple of years as technical. I would learn how to. I could have gotten a career writing instruction manuals. I really could have. And then my other class, forget his name, Mr. Fisher, was architecture and drafting. I loved architecture. To this day, I love architecture. I would, in school, not only drafting, but in general, I would design homes and buildings, commercial buildings, all 4 years of high school. The last 3 years of high school, actually. My work that I finished, I submitted to the Orange County Fairgrounds and won first and second prize for the student section of architects and design and art. And that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've heard that architecture and I guess arguably, is the first form of art.
That would probably be true.
Okay. I might say storytelling, but then people had to have houses, so there was architecture.
They had to figure out how to put those rocks in the right place.
Yes, they did.
You know, the other thing that I was doing in school, always been kind of an entrepreneur, from my first paperboy route to all the cars and vehicles I had. Throughout high school, I would buy and sell automobiles out of junkyards and put them together in our backyard, rebuild cars, and sell them. And learned a very mechanical mind. I think back in those days, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have computers, we didn't have iPhones, we did not have all these technical things. And there were things that I really liked. I liked cars. I wanted to have a nice one. I couldn't afford them. However, I found I could build them. I could find junk cars and put them together and have myself really nice automobiles and sell them.
Did the ability to be able to do that stem from working with tools in your hands?
Yeah. And I have an incredible memory. I can take an automobile's transmission apart, for example, put all the parts on the counter, put it all back together, and there won't be any parts left, and they'll be in the right place.
Okay, so you were AI before there was AI.
Yeah. Kind of.
Yeah, it's interesting to think working with hands. My friend Shannon, she worked for JPL, and she kind of went there right out of college, and she ended up being for NASA. She ended up being in charge of STEM worldwide for NASA. But the one thing she's told me is that it's important that children learn to use their hands.
I think it is important, and learn how to be not only creative, but be able to support themselves and be able to take care of things and fix things and self-sufficient, I think. I was taught a lot of that. I had a stepfather that taught us many things. We'd go camping, and then camping. But I'm not talking like overnight camping. This would be like 2 months at a time. He'd have summer vacations, and we'd take off in the car and be gone for 2.5 months.
Oh, because he was a school teacher.
Uh-huh. And so during that time, we'd travel across the country with a big camper on top of the station wagon and pull up somewhere, spend a day, 2 days, whatever. A few of the trips were landed where we stayed for several weeks. We stayed in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania for about 5 weeks. During one summer, we had a project some seminar he was doing. I'm not exactly sure what. And I had a great opportunity to see a lot of the East Coast when I was there and work. While I was there. I was 15 when we went, and I got a job for the summer and made money. I wasn't about to sit around and do nothing during the day, so.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that's just some of the things I did as a kid. I was a bicycle rider. I haven't ridden for a few years now, but I love bicycling. I'd ride all over Southern California. I was an introvert of sorts, but I was, again, active in the church where I learned to dance and have my friends there. That was a vital part of my life up until near the end of high school.
So you describe yourself as someone who always loved art, design, color, and reading.
Still do.
So where do you think that curiosity came from?
I think my family overall, my mother was always a bit of a creative person. My grandmother for sure. I don't think so much on my father's side. It was my real father. I got my math skills from him. I'm very, very, very good at math. I'm not really sure where it came from. Not a whole lot of artistic people in my family. I have this side of me that you could plant me in the Guggenheim and you'd probably have to pull me out in about a week.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't leave. I'd be sitting and looking at everything and just imagining.
I think curiosity is the most important thing to give our kids.
Yes, I think curiosity drives humanity. Without it, where would we be?
Yeah. And it doesn't have to always do with art. I mean, we're thinking art
everything,
here.
Everything.
You had some bad times. Do you want to talk about those?
Well, they didn't start out all bad.
Yeah, well, bad might not have been a good word. You were going where you didn't want to go. Or maybe you were going where you wanted to go.
A little bit, all of it.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things. When I graduated from high school, a few things had happened. I was unhappy at home, and I left home. I'm one of those children. I was not like today where you move out and go back home. I didn't do that. I literally moved out. However, in a way, I went back home. My real father had gotten a hold of me and asked me to come live with him in Arizona. And by that time, he was quite a successful man. Had an accounting business, did bookkeeping on service stations around the Southwest.
There's where the math comes in.
And I was already good at math. And again, I have to go back in time. This was in the early 70s. I mean, I graduated high school in 1970. There still wasn't a personal computer on our desk back then.
No. Oh, you graduated in 1970?
I did.
Oh, so did I.
at Corona Del Mar High School. I went to work for Dad, and we did bookkeeping for service stations, small businesses, all over Arizona and Nevada, approximately 450 different clients. A number of people worked for him. And I had great lessons in understanding bookkeeping, checks and balances, debits and credits, how to add. I already knew how to add and subtract. Learned to run a 10-key adder, which wasn't hard. I already had learned to type a long time ago, much earlier. So that all went pretty well, getting to know Dad. And I hadn't started drinking yet, by the way. I'm going to talk about that soon. I had been a good Mormon boy. He wouldn't drink until he would never drink. But I followed rules. Even though I bent them, I pretty much followed them. And Dad did something really, really awful. He went and died.
Oh.
He was 42 years old. I only knew him by that point just a few short years. I'd been out with him in the afternoon talking about some business things and at work. And later that evening, he had a massive heart attack and passed away. That kind of sent my life a little different. I had some insurance background. We had an insurance agency. I went to work for a really large insurance broker out of Phoenix. They hired me shortly after he passed away, and that's where I met my first wife. She was working for that company, and we proceeded to get married and stayed married for 25 years. I stayed in the insurance business, property casualty insurance, for quite a while, bounced around from Phoenix back to California with her, and we moved around a number of times. She was a secretary. She later became a paralegal in her career. I fell out of the insurance business. I didn't like it. It was boring. I didn't know what to do, and I took a job selling automobiles. By about that time, I had started this other little thing on the side. I was drinking a little bit. I had a friend of mine that came to me one day and poured me a glass of scotch with some ice in it, and it was terrible tasting. I didn't like it. I spit it out, and then I asked for another one and had it, and I didn't stop drinking it for a long time. That really was not really my problem, but I had a problem with alcohol. All that growth that I learned as a kid, all those things started to change ever so slowly. I became successful in the business I was in, very successful in the car business, really. And quite a failure in another way, because I was a failure at home. I was at work all the time. And I'd go to the bar afterwards with all my friends and be at work all the time. And I'd come home, and by about halfway through that marriage, by then we had 2 children. I married Sue, she had a daughter, and later had a son. Great kids. Pretty lucky. They're pretty good humans today. But Dad wasn't around, and I would drink more and more, and I would sometimes not, and I would. The career started to go up and down. I was living in a time, if you've ever seen the television show or movie Mad Men, it was that period of time. The 3-martini lunch really wasn't a joke. It was really a 3-martini lunch. It was really wearing the suits and behaving like a jerk, arrogant, self-centered, and chasing money or goals that were either achievable. Whether they were achievable or not was how you chased. And I didn't understand any of that, but I was living right in the middle of it. And for a while, it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun until I didn't. In my early 40s, things were starting to go a little tougher at work. You could only drink so much scotch and show up and do so well. I also had this crazy thought in my head that I wouldn't live beyond between 40 and 50. Both my father died at 42. My uncle Oliver had died at 42, and Elvis Presley died at 42, and they all died in the same year. I thought sure I was going to be a goner at 42. Somebody up there had different plans for me because I made it to 50. But by the time I made it to 50, I had pretty much destroyed a 25-year marriage from drinking a lot, playing a lot, ups and downs in my career, being the big shot, having affairs, just all the things that Craig wasn't, I was. I had grown in weight. And then one day my wife said to me she didn't want to be with me anymore. What was wrong with her, I thought? She just got tired of my stuff. Anyway, that ended and really started to spiral. I was about 48, 49 when that happened. Drinking increased. I got myself up to a stealth 354 pounds. If you were sitting here in this room with me, I'm half that size today. The company I'd finally gone to work for I'd gone to work for a sales company that took me in route sales around the Southwest. And one of the areas I was at often was Las Vegas. I ended up, after being evicted from an apartment in Long Beach, California, found a place of all places, Las Vegas. Now, the lucky thing is I don't gamble, but I did drink, and I did play around. I met a girl at a bar. Gee, what a surprise. Fell in love with her. That story is in my book. One day it just got really, really ugly. She and I were living together, and I found that, again, being evicted from a home I was renting, couldn't pay my bills, borrowing money from places, family. It's terrible. 50 years old, coming up on 50 years old, and I was that big a mess. And I grew up a good Mormon kid. There was just something, everything just wasn't working. One night, one afternoon, I had a really, really bad day. I mean, it just finally culminated. the landlord of the house that I was renting that had served me eviction papers had a heart attack, was in a hospital, and his son called me and blamed me for the heart attack. And that just started it off. Then I had gotten up that morning and I had $5 in my pocket because I'd spent it all at a steakhouse the night before in a bar and a little bit of gas in the car. And I'm out driving all over the place. And I wanted to have a drink. I stopped at a golf course in Summerlin. And I knew the shift changes of the bar, and I drank, and I walked out and didn't pay my bill. It's the only time I never paid a bar bill. Couldn't believe I did it. And I got home, had a fight with my girlfriend. She left to go do something, and I accidentally saw myself. I took a shower, here's the ugly truth. I got out of the shower. I had a glass of wine or whatever it was on the counter in the bathroom, and I saw myself in the mirror. This red-faced, 354-pound man, broken, and I didn't know what to do because I couldn't put it back together anymore, and I couldn't tell anybody. It was all inside of me, but at the same time, everybody knew everything about me that I wasn't able to talk about. And I remember that night. I remember that night every day. Anyway, I remember that night. I don't know why I did it. I got down on my knees and asked God for an hour's worth of sleep because all I could see is demons in my head. Everything was going crazy. My head was spinning everywhere I could turn. And I made a promise. I said, if you let me sleep for an hour, when I get up, whatever you tell me to do, I'll do it. And I promise I'll do it. Now, why that was important, I said that, I think, was in the past, I always prayed to the porcelain gods in the bar when I got done drinking. And it was not, and I never kept any promise. Anyway, I woke up and I went into the kitchen. And some people might laugh, but we still had phone books back then. And I went to the kitchen and pulled a phone book off and opened it up to all things, the letter A, which shockingly I could say attorneys, but it wasn't attorneys. It opened up to Alcoholics Anonymous. And that day, through a series of events, I found myself walking into those rooms and not wanting to be there, trying to figure out why this guy that 350 pounds, wearing a suit of all things in an AA meeting, in a meeting where everybody had tattoos. It seemed like everybody had tattoos. I was very judgmental, wearing blue jeans, dressed like crap, smoking cigarettes outside, motorcycles, places I would never have gone to. And it was a meeting house for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was sitting in the middle of the room with these things called steps and traditions and all these things on the wall. And I'm about ready to walk out, even though I promised God I'd go there because I made that promise to let me sleep. And there was a gentleman, as the meeting ended, that tapped me on the shoulder and asked me if I wanted to sit down for a little bit. And I did, and we talked. I only saw him that one time, but I spoke with him for a couple of hours. During that time, another man, his name was Bob, he tapped me on the shoulder. He came up. I knew this man owned Alcoholics Anonymous. He was wearing a Tommy Bahamas shirt, some boots, $1,000 worth of clothes, tall, looked like Kenny Rogers, and put his hand out and said, "Hi, I'm Bob Darrell." And there was something about him, I thought sure that he was the CEO of this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous. That is how naive I was about and unknowledgeable what this program was. That was the day my life really began to change. I never had another drink after that to this day. But a whole series of things happened. Not very quickly, but a whole series of things happened. And not all of them were good, but they turned out okay.
Well, you met, as I remember reading the book, you met some nice people who just stepped up.
Yes, I did. The first a couple of things that happened right away. I'll start with Mr. Darrell first. I found out that there is no owner of Alcoholics Anonymous. He had invited me to a speaker meeting to go to the next night. This was on a Wednesday and on a Thursday night. But no, I chose to do something different on Thursday morning. I got in my car thinking, I still need some money, and I was going to go over and borrow money from my mom in Newport Beach. So I get in the car, and I'm almost there on Highway 15. And if you know California, there's a little town called Corona. I'll never forget this. I can never forget this. So I called Mr. Darrell on the phone, remember, thinking he was the president of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm used to dealing with businessmen, and I didn't want to disappoint him. He seemed pretty important. So I called him on the phone and told him what I was doing. And he says, you're doing, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm going to go see a couple of clients and I'm going to go down to Newport Beach and see my mom and all this bullshit. Anyway, one of the first things that ever happened to me, right between the eyes, he says to me, on the freeway, on this little cell phone that I had, "So what are you going to do, Craig, when you cannot pay your mother back this time?" As I say that again to myself now, that very moment, I think that was the very moment that I knew for sure that it was over for me. I pulled over the car, got off the freeway, and spoke to Bob Darrell for a while. He gave me some phone numbers of people to see in Orange County that he knew. And I really did get, he may not have been the president of AA, but he knew a lot of people, and he's helped a lot of men.
It sounded like also he knew you.
He knew me without knowing me yet.
Yes. Yeah.
But he knew me, and that struck me. So literally, I followed directions. He gave me 2 key people to meet down there. So after that, I drove over to Mom's house, and I told my mom that I had walked into Alcoholics Anonymous. She took me outside the house and put her finger up to her lips and said, "Don't tell anybody." That was a pretty bad thing, a scary thing for her to hear. Don't tell anybody. Okay. Anyway, so I continued the weekend. I went to some meetings with a club called the Laguna Club down in Laguna Beach. I met a couple of the people that Bob had wanted me to meet. Went to what we call in our company a meeting all for men down in Lido Island. Another one over at Sunset Beach for the weekend. All of those meetings, I heard stories, met people, some just like me, some not like me at all, most of them not like me at all. That's how I felt. But I felt like I might be on the right track here. I didn't want to, I just knew I didn't want to feel like I was feeling anymore. And I wanted to pay back I wanted to get out of trouble, and I didn't really want to die, and I just didn't know how to do it. But I know that there was one thing that I was doing that I could stop, and that was pouring the scotch in me. And this seemed to be a way I could do it in those 12 steps. And I realized really quickly, again, I think the spiritual side of me really became important without me realizing it back then. There was a God, and he was watching over me, because rarely did I listen to people. I always have to do things my way. So often it's my way. I can fix that car. I can fix that plumbing thing. I can fix that money problem. I can do these things. I always can fix things. So you can't. I can. You know what? I couldn't fix this. And I had to listen. And I did. I don't know why I did it, but I did. I drove back home on that Sunday. I didn't borrow all that money from Mom. I did borrow enough for gas, I got to be honest, but I really didn't borrow the money I thought I was going to do. I came home and started facing those things. I drove on the way home. I called Mr. Darrell on the phone, told him what happened. And I said, they tell me in this room I have to have a sponsor, and I don't know how to get one. And he volunteered, and he said he'd be a temporary sponsor. The word temporary is important. He's a temporary sponsor. So a mentor, as you will. For those that don't know what AA is about, have somebody that's walked through these things before and helps you out. And I said, okay. He said, I'll meet you tomorrow. This club in Vegas. That's where it started. The rest of it was sort of like driving a station wagon down the road. Back in the days, we used to have station wagons before minivans. You drive a station wagon down the road at 70 miles an hour, you step on the brakes, and the car stops just fine. But all the junk in the back keeps flying. That was my life for the next few years, especially the first year. Because when I did return, I got busy in meetings and got to meet Bob. However, I wasn't working yet, and I did have an eviction notice coming up. But again, it seemed to work out, and I didn't have a job, and I needed one. I knew a little bit about the car business because I've been in a long time. I went down. There was an opportunity to go selling cars in a Cadillac store on East Sahara in Las Vegas, and the sales manager hired me. I told him I had just got an AA recently, and he says, when are your meetings? He says, well, there's a good one at noon I like to go to. Okay, you can come here, we'll sell cars and take every day off in time to go to that meeting and come back. Okay. There's another little thing that worked in my direction, because one of the things I learned in AA was I'd do 90 meetings in 90 days, and you'll start to learn. And I was listening. I wanted to go and do that, and it was social anyway, so it worked. So I had a job, and I was there about the first 2 weeks. The second week I was there working, it was a Saturday evening, literally 2 weeks on a Saturday night. We closed the dealership up at 6 o'clock, and I go out to get in my little Nissan car, and it was gone. It had been repossessed at work. You know, they repossess cars when you don't make the payments. I knew that, but I didn't know they knew where I worked. But my beautiful girlfriend had told them, so that was great. And I come running back in, and I tell John, my boss, he gives me a car keys and something to drive home for the night. Next lesson happened. I get home and I'm all wound up. My head is just spinning. What am I going to do? I want to have a car. I got to go to work. Now, think of it. Everything that you're thinking of doing is going bad. And you're going, and I just got sober and I got meetings on. I'm going crazy. So I called Bob, the mentor, sponsor. And he listens to all that for a second. He says, Craig, now he says, I want you to do is just get down on your knees and give it all up to God up there and let go of it. And everything will be okay on Monday. I promise you won't be walking. I'm shaking my head. This is Saturday night. I'm going to be walking. Okay, but I did what he said to do. Monday comes. I come in, of course. By then, everybody at work knew my car had been repossessed. And believe me, they tell you about it. Gee, how is it with that car? Early in the morning, we took a trade-in. Somebody had traded in this pretty little white Cadillac that was too old for us to really sell in the store. And we took it in for a really reasonable value, like maybe $1,000 or something. I forget exactly. And I went to our general manager, and he knew what had happened. I said, I had sold some cars, and I could pay for that, but I can't pay for it for a few weeks out of my commissions. And he's, no problem. Writes up the deal, helps me get insurance on it that day. And that evening, I didn't walk home. So Mr. Darrell, Bob Darrell, was right. And when I called him, Bob Darrell, that evening, I said, I got a car. And he told me, Craig, he says, now, you're one of the few people in the program that have a car. That's God's car. If you're asked to take somebody somewhere or something happens, raise your hand and help because you have a car. And it's your job to do that. Okay. That's what I said. Okay. Again, a miracle. Small miracle, but a miracle. 2 weeks later. This is how fast this is happening. I'd been literally all within the first 30 days of walking into AA. Well, I had to deal with that eviction notice. I didn't have a choice. My girlfriend calls me at work. I can't get in the house. She says, I can't get in the house. So I go again to my boss and I say, hey, I got to leave for a little bit. And I ran home and sure enough, there was a big sticker on the front door and all the doors were locked and she couldn't push the button to open the door and we couldn't get in the house and everything was in there. I walked around the house and I found that the sliding door was a little bit open. I jarred it and was able to get in. And I plugged back in the door, took all the stickers off, and I ran down to the courthouse. It was still early enough in the day, and I got an injunction or wherever they called it back then to stay this thing so I wouldn't get thrown out. And I got myself another 30 days while I could figure it out. Had I been drinking, I never would have been able to do that. I would have just found a U-Haul truck and gotten everything out as quick as I could, and who knows where. But another kind of little miracle in an odd way, but I was able to do what I needed to do. It wasn't a great thing, but I was able to solve a good solution. And by then, my girlfriend wanted to break up with me for sure. While that was happening, the last day of being in that house, about 30 days later, was another miracle. Steve, I can't believe you're asking me to tell this, but I'm glad to be telling it. I wrote about a lot of this. I'll tell you how I got to writing in a few minutes, but this is insane. So I'm down to $5 in my pocket. I've been making some money, but not enough, going to meetings, doing all the right things. And it's finally over. I have my bags packed in the car, and the house is empty, put stuff in storage, and I still didn't have a place to live, and I did not know where. I had one more night in there, and I did not know where I was going to be living within a couple of days. Now, I had a job, and we were having this big sale at work. Been published all over, going to be a midnight sale of automobiles. And I really wasn't that good a car salesman. I was good in the car business, but there was a different side of the business that I've been in. So what I was doing at that time, and I was still heavy. I was still a pretty heavy guy. Hadn't lost very much weight yet. Come Saturday morning, and I go to the big sale. And it was announced. Now, for any of you that are listening to this that have anything to do with sales, and particularly the car business, you would know this. The first sale of the day, there'll be a $1,000 cash bonus paid tonight. Now, I'd been around the car business my whole life, and I had never qualified for one of those kind of bonuses. I just never had. And, of course, I'm 350 pounds and I'm going to run out and catch somebody buying a car. I'm thinking to myself, I found every reason in my head why I couldn't do it. However, sales meeting's over. Plus, by the way, there were some other incentives. There was a $1,000 bonus for that. There was a glass window in the sales office that the store closed at night. There were going to be a series of envelopes with money in them, or not. And one of the envelopes would have $1,000 in it. And if you sold the car if this first car of the deal is before noon, there was another $1,000. Those were all the bonuses out for the day. This truly happened. I forgot about it. So I go out, and there's this guy looking at this little car, this little sports car, a little Corvette, a used one. And I kind of slow out there, and he's older. And people were walking, these young guys were walking by him, trying to sell Hondas and all the things they were doing with the families coming in. It looked like he was just kind of lingering around the Corvette. I walked out there and met him. He says, yeah, I've been coming down here every night for the last couple of weeks looking at this car, and I just decided that today I'd really like to buy it. Okay. So we went around the block in it. I got a key. Came back. He paid full price for the car because he really wanted it. That happened within the hour of the dealership opening. So I earned a $1,000 bonus for that, and it happened before noon. It was the first car. It was not only the first car, but it happened before noon. So I made $2,000 at that point. And I was going to get it later in the day. Couldn't believe it. I didn't sell a car the rest of the day. It was hot. I was 350 pounds, sweating like crazy. But I stayed till the end of the day because I knew I'd have those bonuses. The last thing I would have thought of was that I'd have an opportunity to be the first one to pull an envelope off the window in the sales office. And this happened too. I swear, all the salespeople thought it was rigged. I went and pulled an envelope. First car of the deal, I get to pull the first envelope. There must have been 50 envelopes in there. Pulled one just to the left of center. And what was in it? A $1,000 bonus. I had $5 in my pocket that morning, not knowing where I was going to live. A little bit of gas in the car, and suitcases packed. Didn't have a dime. At the end of the day, I had enough money to take care of a whole bunch of things I needed to take care of. In my whole career, that had never happened to me. And it hasn't happened since, but it happened then. True story.
Before we get back to today's episode, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about the two new books that have recently found their way into the world. The Art of Noticing is a collection of observations, essays, and reflections inspired by years of photography, podcast conversations, travel, public lands, and the simple practice of paying attention. It's a reminder that wonder is often hiding in plain sight if we slow down long enough to notice. My newest release, Sandcastle Windows, is my first work of fiction, set between present-day Nevada and the Paris art world of the 1870s. It explores a question that has fascinated me for years. What if you could step inside a future memory? It's a story about art, friendship, time, and the moments that shape our lives long before we realize their importance. Both books share a common thread, the belief that ordinary moments often become the memories we treasure most. To learn more about The Art of Noticing and Sandcastle Windows and my other children's books, visit my Amazon author page. And now let's get back to the Art Box.
I started writing all this because a few weeks, I think a couple of months into the program, some woman at a meeting one day, she says, well, you speak pretty good. I hadn't spoken very much. She says, you should write it down. And you should also, she says, you should write a journal. So I'm 50 years old and I start writing a journal. Who would have ever thought? Even Mrs. Brubaker would have been proud.
Yes, she would have. Her 50-year-old student.
So I got yellow pads, and that's what I wrote my journal for the next few years. Every day I would write something about the day, how it was, what went good, what went bad, things I learned, things that upset me, the problems. At first it was grumbling, sometimes the worst things that happened, but I would write. I would write some of the lessons I would learn. And when I'd be grumbling, I'd be talking in meetings, trying to figure out things, and people would tell me different ways of getting out of my own head and learning to be grateful. And all these little tools, the serenity prayer, and on and on and on, and little tidbits. And I'd write them, and they'd stick in my brain, and I would share about them. Then the yellow pads became a spiral notebook, and then finally computers were, obviously by this time I'd been around, I'd been using them for a while, and it got easier and easier to write. Led to through all of it, I kept staying sober. And I've been writing about it all the time. Stories of people that I meet and I listen to, and they're horrific things that might have happened in their life. And I think about mine and go, oh, I'm so glad I have my story and not theirs. Just driving people places that I probably wouldn't have normally because I had God's car. Any number of things. So the book started to happen. Not ever thinking about writing a book. But about 2011, I think it was, I should put these out in a blog. This is a new thing called a blog. Well, it was new to me. And so I learned how to do a blog. I subscribed to this WordPress thing, and I started this little website that I didn't know how to do. I truly didn't know how to do any of these things. And I started writing articles for the blog. So my blog has got a lot of stuff posted in it. And I still post, and not as often. I'm about to again, but it's there. followcraig.com. But I start writing all these little stories and memories that came pretty much out of my journal and or experiences that I was thinking at that time, what happened to me and around me, and I'd see. And I grew in my faith. I had made a big decision in that, in sobriety, and I wrote about that, how I grew up as a Latter-day Saint, became agnostic for many years, and later became a Christian and celebrate my faith as a Lutheran, and how I came about that decision. I've written about that. I've written how I've set my standards and know what they are. I used to be a man that didn't know what I stood for, so therefore I didn't have any standards. And if you don't have any standards, you don't know what you stand for nothing. And all these things that I had dismissed for those years of drinking and hanging out the bars and not being the family man I could have been, started to change, started to make amends where I could to people, and I wrote about those things. And I thought, why don't I put this on my blog? Why don't I put it on paper? I figured out how to make a blog work, so it took a while. So I ended up writing a book, and imperfect as it is, like me, I decided to get it out there. So I learned the things not to do by doing things. Writing a book can be challenging, it can be hard and rewarding, all of those emotions. I remember the first time I decided to get an editor to help me with some of it. And I hired an editor, and I sent the first couple of chapters of my book, and it came back to me, and it wasn't even the book I wrote. I left some things in there from my journal in the very beginning I never wanted to take out. Some misspelled words, some a couple of graphic words, but it was really how I felt in the very beginning. I wanted it there, and I wanted it that way. Because I really did learn a long time ago how to punctuate and spell. But that's what I was thinking, what was written in my journal, and I pretty much copy and pasted it, especially the first chapter. And it came back different. So I learned what not to do with an editor, that I had to find a better way. When we're writing our story, we want our story to be written the way we see it, not the way somebody thinks it should be written. So I learned that trouble.
Well, they're looking at it from their experience of how it's going to sell.
Of course.
Because that's the only thing they're thinking of.
That's the only thing. And I'm fair with that. I'm not mad at them about it. You can't be, but there's that creativity part of it. I think creative people have a tendency, if they draw a painting, they want it to look the way they do it, even if somebody else will look at it and go, you should have put some green up there in the corner on the left.
Yeah.
But that took a little bit of time for me to learn. Again, one of those understanding people better. But anyway, that's how I got to writing the book. Publishing it was kind of fun. I couldn't afford to go buy a publisher, pay a publisher the kind of money you can pay. But again, the world of computers, there's this thing called Amazon, and they have a service called Kindle Publishing. Honestly, it makes it really, really easy. You can publish your own book. I did not set out with a goal in mind to particularly sell a book. I wanted to get the book out there so I could give it away, and maybe if I'm talking to another alcoholic or somebody struggling in their life, I could say, sometimes it's hard for me to say all the words in person, but let me share with you what it was like for me and the things that I did. Maybe it can help you. And that was truly the only reason I wrote the book.
And I think you've accomplished it. This is sad. It's inspiring.
I hope a little funny in some parts.
Well, the next word I was going to say was comical. Okay. Because we've all had too much to drink, and we've gone over some humps but you pulled it out, and here we sit. So let me ask you, so when you would sit down to write, you're staring at a blank page. So you want to give advice to someone who's sitting there staring at a blank page right now?
I can give advice as to the best I could give is just what works for me. I just start writing. I'll scribble. I'll make notes. I still love yellow pads. I end up typing it when I'm done, but I buy yellow pads, by the dozens and go through them all the time. But my thoughts go there constantly. So I look at my thoughts. I think about what I'm trying to say, what the goal is I'm trying to get out there. Particularly when I'm writing, I'm intending it to go somewhere else. So I start writing with a goal in mind, and I make all kinds of mistakes, particularly when it's something that's really important to write or feels like it's really important. But I can't stare at a blank page very long. It just doesn't work for me. The pencil or pen shows up in my hand, and I start writing something.
Yeah, and we've had a guest on who said that once you start, don't pick up the pen off the paper. That's what she suggested.
I think that's good advice. I would say that's probably true. I'd have to go with that one. And it's really important to do it. It's so important for you, for me, for the writer, the creative person to get that out, because otherwise you got a bundle up inside of you and you can't get it out. You've got to get it out, even if the words don't come out the way you want, or they're misspelled, or if they're nasty words. Who cares? Get it out. Whatever you're feeling. Once it's on the paper, then you can rewrite, you can reread it and make changes and edit yourself. You might have to wait a day or 2 days to step away from it and step back to it after you've written it and go, oh, I like that, but let me move that paragraph over here. And now you've got something to work with because you've thrown it out there. But you can't get it done without starting. You've got to write that first letter, that first word, that first thought. Even if you have to write down, I don't know how to write a book. If that's what you have to write down, you start and don't let that pen up and keep writing.
Okay, what have you learned from meeting other writers and artists?
Oh, I've learned so much. I'm learning to write better. I'm more of a technical type writer than I am a creative writer. So to listen to creative writers is really fun, to listen how they'll delightfully describe a joyful thing in their life. And it says something simple, I was happy. I mean, they can just make it sound like, wow. And I love that. And I try to adopt that. One of the things I learned about particularly writing about your life and experiences. I was at a writer's forum one time here in town. It was kind of fun. But there was another writer, and she said, we all have a story to tell. You need to write your story. If you don't write your story, somebody else will. That so stuck with me. I really, really got that. See, it fits into a philosophy, a bit of my philosophy. Did you know that we're brought here on Earth at one point in our life, and God calls us home at another point in our life, and most of us will have some recognition of that, a tombstone or otherwise. And in the middle, between the date you were born and the date you were called home, there's this thing called a dash, and it's so important to know what did you do with your dash? And you got to write about it, or you got to know about it and make it clear so people, when they see, well, what did he do with his life or she do with his life? Because the dash matters. Our lives matter. We need to write our own story. We need to help others. We need to do so. It's a responsibility. It isn't a need. It's a responsibility, especially when people have pulled themselves back out of wherever they are. God's given us so much at that point. There's a responsibility to share it. And for me, it works to write it and to act it when I can in my life, but to get it out there and share it with people.
I like what you said about the dash. You don't happen to know Jim McCoy, do you?
No.
He's in Las Vegas. He did a poem for our special last year, and it was about the dash. And it was, he talked of his mother had just died, so it was his eulogy to his mother. And it was her name, and 1906-1975, I don't know what it was for. And he did a whole poem about what that dash means. And you're the second one to bring that up, and I love that, because there's a lot in that dash.
There is.
Hey everybody, Steve here. And seeing how this is my podcast, I can pretty much do anything I want. I'm going to break in here real quick because Craig brought up the dash, and we had a guest, Jim McCoy from Las Vegas. He's a poet and just an artisan. He's quite the artist on stage, via written word, on and on. Jim is great. He recited a poem that he recited at his mom's celebration of life, and it's called The Dash. And I just want to add that in here. And Jim, I hope you don't mind me using this again here. I just think it's the proper place for it. So I'm bringing you Jim McCoy. If you want to listen to Jim's other poems, they are in our 2025 collection, Harvest of Thought. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy.
It's a poem called The Dash by Linda Ellis. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke the following date with tears. But he said what matters most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time that they spend alive on earth. And now only those who love them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel, and be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and often wear a smile, remembering this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehatch, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash?
And I think that's all we have. I'd like to think we have so much more when it's all over, but it's all we have. Really, and you think about it this way, think of it as, has anybody ever seen a hearse going down the road with a U-Haul trailer attached to it? Really? I mean, we can't take any of it with us, but we can leave something behind. And what we do matters. When I spent all those years, my children didn't get to know Dad. I didn't get to know my children. That's not their fault. Many things that we don't get to do because we don't live life to its fullest. And I've learned to try to learn and be grateful in life. I'll tell you how much joy that brings. This is not in the book. It's more recent. Not long ago, just a few months ago, I was in San Diego where my children live and my grandchildren. And I have my daughter's house. I spent the day there. And my youngest grandchild had been haunting me all day. Grandpa this, Grandpa that, follow me here. Anybody that's a grandfather knows what that's like. She's 10 years old, cute as a button. At the end of the day, I'm about to leave and head back to my hotel, and she comes running up the hallway. And she says to me, Grandpa, tell me what you do. I never asked you what kind of work you do. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And I looked at her, and I thought for a second. I looked at her and said, I'm an author. She ran to her bedroom, comes running back with a book in hand, opened up, like this? You write books like this? And I said, yeah, I write. Big gasp. All this is celebration, calls for celebration. And she went into the living room and did a double cartwheel.
Did she? Did you follow her and do one?
No, I couldn't do that. But the joy, see, I never would have gotten to see that. I never, ever would have gotten to see that. Never would have gotten to see that had I not walked in those rooms all those years ago, had I not had the experiences I've had, not had to put this on paper, started a blog, started a journal, and written a book, and got it out there, and I could tell somebody is, and honestly, from my heart, who I am, and she loved it, and I loved her, and that joy that brings you. That's why it's so important to tell your story. That's important and why we have to do what we do. Why I do what I do.
That was probably the most beautiful cartwheel ever in all human history, don't you think?
I think so. I'm really glad you don't have a video of me right now because I'm crying.
Well, that's okay. We had a guest here who told us it was okay to cry, and we've always done that. Do you want to talk about your upcoming book? What was I made for? Yeah, it's something, it kind of goes along with everything I've been talking about. As a kid, for me personally, and I think one of the kids, I was born in 1951 in a military hospital in Oakland, California. And I think I was as much as surprised about why I'm here as my parents were. My mom and dad staring down at me. I mean, two young kids, and an 18-year-old and 19-year-old kid. You know, what was I here for? Mark Twain once wrote, 2 most important days in a person's life is the day they were born and then the day they found out why. And I've been thinking about that for a long time because I went through that stage in my life. I did not know who I was for a long time. I loved architecture. I liked cars. I enjoyed working on things, hobbies. I liked electronics. I loved music. I loved art. I even liked this writing stuff. I liked all of that. And at the same time, I was successful in the work. I was good at so many things. I wasn't a football player. I didn't care for sports. I had been brought up in a church that I was brought up into. Nothing wrong with any of that. Overall, pretty decent life. But I never knew who I was, what I wanted. I'd see people, as a kid, my parents would say, well, you should be an architect. And my father would say, I should be an attorney, an accountant. Somebody else would say, my mother-in-law told me once, because I like to read in libraries, she said, you should become a librarian. I mean, it went on and on and on, all the things I should do. But what I couldn't figure out is what I wanted to do. And I was a people pleaser. I grew up a people pleaser. I didn't want to get yelled at and in trouble. I was good at a lot of things, so I just kind of did what I didn't know what I wanted to do. Some people are I was envied them because I would go, it seemed like they knew they wanted to be a doctor. They knew they wanted to be a nurse or a fireman or whatever they wanted to be. They knew it when they were a kid, and that's what they do. I wasn't that kid. So I started thinking I should write about what it's like to not know what you were made for. And for me, it took a long time. So I put a lot of that in the book and some stories I've told over the years and listened to and heard. Some of my blog posts are posted in there, rewritten slightly. And how I finally came to terms with being comfortable in my own skin and when it happened. I couldn't talk as much about it in the book that I earlier wrote. And I hadn't really quite even discovered it until I I would say about 10 years ago. Maybe 11. One day I woke up and I got it, and I realized that I'm okay. And I wondered, how often do other people go through that? And I had a lot of friends. One thing that you learn in the programs I'm part of, not only Alcoholics Anonymous, but I'm involved in a lot of community stuff with Rotary International, Toastmasters, Chamber of Commerce things, business stuff to do with my business, people I meet from all over the country, all walks of life, all backgrounds. I have friends from every religion, every faith, every color, everything you can imagine. Quite a number of them all over the country. I have a business and I run that. I'm lucky enough to have that. And so many of us struggle with, well, Mom and Dad said I should do this. But what did you say you should do? So I wrote about my thoughts on that. So what was I made for? It should be out within another 60 or 90 days. Okay, good. I'm looking forward to it. You're self-publishing that?
Yes, I figured out how to do that. It's actually so much fun. I got to tell you, it's so much fun to be able to do this. And you don't have, there's no time limit on it. You can just kind of do it when you want to do it, unless you're like rushed, which I can't imagine.
And you don't have to worry about what your editor's saying to you.
No, I don't have to do that. And God's been really good to me. I don't have to worry about the money part of it, which is particularly nice. That is Go back to all the stuff I talked about in the last hour. When those days back when I was 350 pounds, $5 in the pocket, empty on gas, broke, being evicted, cars repossessed, all this stuff happening. And I look back and I think about all the things that God took away from me. All of it. I had to go through all that crap, ups and downs, all that stuff. You know why? Because he gave me this incredible life, absolutely incredible life. And I wouldn't have been ready for it unless he took all that shit away. And it's important to give it back. So I found out what I was made for.
I got 2 more questions. Are you good?
I am.
Okay. If you could have coffee, if you could have lunch with anyone, past or present, who would it be?
That's a very good question, Steve. There's so many that come to mind. I'm going to keep it more in present tense, present times. I actually would like to sit down with one of our recent past presidents, Mr. Barack Obama. I really would. I find him an interesting man, educated, had to come from a space unknown to many of us, growing up as a single kid of color in an island in Chicago, not accepted, and he finds his way all the way to the heights he has. Love him or hate him, it doesn't make much difference. It is fascinating, and I could learn from somebody like that. I like people that he's not the only one. I like people that have done that in our lives and know who they are. Even if you disagree with them, they know who they are.
Yeah, that's a good choice, because it's okay to talk to someone you disagree with,
yeah,
because you're going to learn something.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? They might also learn something.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So last question. If you could leave our listeners with one thought, what would it be?
Whatever's happening in your life, it's just one day at a time. We have today. Get up today, smile, take note of it. I like to say, hopefully you're spiritual. If you are, it helps. And if it isn't, that's okay. Give away whatever's going on in your life for the day, or at least the evening. Get a good night's sleep, because the next morning it's going to be okay. And you won't feel like it's okay now. But whatever's going on for you, it really will be okay. The one tool, again, I probably sound like I harp on it, but I wrote a different version of the Serenity Prayer for those that might happen to know it. I'm going to read it, and this would be my thought. Grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, courage to change the only one I can, and the wisdom to know that person is me. I found that one tool has served me so well when I'm going through the toughest times, and even some of the joyous times, but mostly the toughest times when things seem bleak. And you know what? It's all going to be okay. It really is.
That's good, Craig. Thank you very much. Before we go, want to sell your book here? Where can we buy it at?
Amazon.
Okay.
Amazon.com. They've got all the websites. My name is Craig Petersen, spelled with an E-N. I know we're gone over time. If anybody wants to know how it is, I started out Craig Petersen, and then later became Craig Petersen, and in between was a Craig Tennell. Simply, I married a woman 17 years ago who I love very much. Her last name was Petersen, and she didn't want to change it. She'd been a bachelor, single all of her life, no kids, and a professional woman. I love her with all my heart. And I raised my hand. I said, "You don't have to change your name. I'll change mine. It's close enough to the one I was born with." And I became Craig Petersen.
Oh. So you didn't go back and change. I thought it had something to do with you then being with your father.
I always wanted my old name back. Always did.
Well, you almost got it back.
But I got it close enough. It's just spelled with an E instead of an O. And that's a fact. I am a man with a maiden name. Gentlemen, it's okay. Go with your heart.
Well, if you look at love has an O and an E in it. So you just took another love from love and added in there. That's great. That's really good, Craig. And now, I didn't even think to ask that.
I couldn't help it when you started asking me where to get the book.
Well, thank you very much, Craig. I really appreciate you coming in here. I'm happy I met you the other day over at Rotary.
Me too.
And we kind of had a few bumps trying to get together here, but we did on this beautiful, it's Monday, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
On this beautiful Monday.
That it is.
I think it's going to be 110 degrees, and we're off to go back in the world. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, my friend.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Artbox Podcast. We're recording from our home studio inside the Mesquite Steam Center, right here in the beautiful Mojave Desert, where creativity and curiosity meet under wide open skies. From the written word and poetry to collage, brush art, pencil, ink, fabric, and pottery, from theater and song to archaeology in our public lands, we celebrate the many ways creativity shows up in the world around us. You can find us on Podbean, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Boomplay, or your favorite podcast app. We'd love to hear from you. Find us at theartboxpodcast.com. Drop us a note anytime at artboxvv@gmail.com. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please like, follow, and subscribe. And don't forget to tell your friends so they can join the conversation too. Most importantly, take a moment to follow and support the artists and creative souls who join us here, because their stories are what make the Art Box come alive. This is Daisy, and until next time, keep creating, keep exploring, and keep sharing your story.